Hi, this is Chris Bosch, and you're listening to Animal House Radio with Aaron and Dr. Mike.
Well, the regulations here, believe it or not, are 1,800 square feet. That's all they get. That's all they have to get, I should say. I mean, what's 1,800 square feet? I mean, it's crazy.
Can we go picket outside the zoo together?
Sure.
Okay,
that's what we'll do together,
That's
right?
what we're going to do. We're going to put a big picket outside of the zoo.
Get a bunch of T-shirts made up, Free Lucy, and we'll wear T-shirts and picket and just have a fine time.
If you promise, I will get you down here. We will do this together. We will. All three of us together. We will save Lucy.
I would like to come to Edmonton, but I'd like to come on.
Yeah, me
for sure.
Yeah, me too. Don't worry.
I've been in warm climates for so long, and my blood is so thin now. I grew up on the prairies of South Dakota, so I know what it is to be cold. But I don't know whether I could handle it now.
Yeah, the weather's
It'd take
getting
a lot
nicer.
of tequila to keep me moving.
Oh, don't worry. We'll do that together. It's going to be fun. Bob, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, the most famous person in the world, still to this day, right now.
The most famous what?
You're the most famous person in the world. It is true. You're an icon. Even
Coca-Cola, Bob Barker. It's all
it's those three things. It's the main event. You are the main event. You are the showstopper. You are the icon. When you go on a radio show, Bob, you become the instant classic.
I tell you, you are. I should have met you a long time ago.
Well, we love you, Bob. Thanks.
You make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm going to be I'm going to be your new agent because anything you do, you're the instant classic. That's it. Bob Barker, the instant classic.
I appreciate it, Aaron, and do what you can for Lucy, won't you?
We will. I promise you we're going to do our best. Bob Barker, thank you so much for taking your time.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Put you on hold so we can go say a proper thank you to yourself, and I appreciate that very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Barker on Animal House Radio. We're going to take a break. Back to you in a couple of seconds on Animal House Radio.
Welcome back to Animal House Radio. You're listening here with Dr. Mike and Aaron Thomas. And we are going to get on the phone right now with Julie Woodger, who Bob talked about very fondly, in fact, from Zoo Check Canada. Hey, Julie.
Hey there,
yourself?
how are you? I'm well, thank you very much.
Wonderful. So did you get to hear us talking to Bob?
Yes, I sure did.
Excellent.
And I actually have some answers to some of the questions that
Well,
came
let's
up
hear 'em.
that weren't,
Let's hear 'em.
Weren't clarified there. So.
Go ahead. We're open ears.
Okay, well, first I want to say that the reason the zoo's position is so odd, on one hand she's sick, on one hand she's healthy, is because in Alberta there is a law that prohibits the keeping of animals in inappropriate social groupings. And as everybody in the world probably knows, appropriate social groupings for elephants are in groups.
Right.
The zoo associations, including the Canadian Association for Zoos, the one that the Edmonton Zoo actually belongs to, says that female elephants should never be held singly.
Right.
This is basic concept. The way the zoo has gotten around the law is by stating, well, she's too sick to be moved, and so if we moved her, we'd be violating another law by moving a sick elephant, and so that's how they've kept her. And let me just tell you one more thing. I have read all kinds of documents in their master plan where they describe Lucy as a zoo icon, a celebrity for fundraising for their facility. In their zoo logo is an elephant, and they must keep her for that reason. All of these things are well documented within their own documents.
Right.
So, there's a big question about really why she's there, and which is why, in our campaign and our work with Mr. Barker, one of the things we really wanted to do was bring in vets from outside. And when I say outside, I mean even outside the zoo community. I mean in the sanctuary community.
Right.
To actually go in there, do a proper examination, and figure out what her issues are. Because you're absolutely right about this molar sinus problem. It's questionable, right? It doesn't seem to make sense. And I contacted a guy who just does elephant dental work in the UK, and he said, as far as he's concerned, it makes no sense. It sounds impossible to him. There's maybe 1,000,000 to 1 chance it could be the case.
Right.
I also know that I personally have reviewed all of the medical records for Lucy. I got them through Freedom of Information.
Right.
And the sinus respiratory issue started in 2004, and yet the malposition molar was only first mentioned last year
Wow.
in the medical records. so, there's a bit of question about what the accuracy of that diagnosis may be.
They're think. Like, you don't think, take an x-ray. I mean, I got to imagine she's a pretty tame elephant. There are diagnostics, I'm sure, that they can do that can at least come up with a reason why she has respiratory distress or the malpositioned molar or, whatever the case may be. As a veterinarian, I stop and think, wow, I mean, I don't know anything about elephants, and I already have a few ideas on what we could do.
Right, sure. And there's always questions about tuberculosis and other things in elephants, which is, of course, a zoonotic disease that's transferable between elephants and humans. And there's various kinds of tests for that, and I know the zoo has run some of those tests, but the sort of less conclusive ones.
Right.
So anyway, some of those tests are going to need to be run, and we hope that when Ed and the veterinarians go up there, that the zoo will cooperate. Now, let me just clarify about that position, too. I know there was a question about your caller had mentioned that the local media in Edmonton were saying that there's been no confirmation yet. And what I can tell you is I know that Denise Prefontaine has, in fact, contacted Ed, and that the zoo has agreed that Ed can come up there with veterinarians. And Dean Treichel, the director of the zoo, has said that openly on a live radio show that he and I both did a couple of days ago now, that veterinarians are welcome in. So we're very pleased about all of that.
That's good.
The zoo is being really open and saying, okay, bring them in. The March 8th date that I talked to Ed Stewart tonight, and he and the vets are available that time. And I actually left a message for Dean Treichel myself today to try and make sure that he'll be available and able to do that on March the 8th. So I suspect it will all come together on the 8th. I can't see why Mr. Treichel wouldn't go ahead and do that since he's already agreed for them to come.
Great.
And as you can imagine, bringing people in from California takes a little bit more organizing, so hopefully he'll accommodate their schedule.
That's great. Now, a question for you that I have is how do these guys get accredited by the Canadian Association of Zoos and Aquariums? I mean, what is their mandate?
Well, that's a very, very interesting question, and I'm so pleased that you asked it.
Well, there you go.
The Association of Zoos and Aquariums, it is like any other industry association, right? They're there to protect them. Like, for instance, when Lucy was left alone, immediately I put in a complaint to them. They're violating your standards. Your standards say that they shouldn't be kept singly. And they came back and said, well, they're kind of like guidelines. and the zoo has assured us that Lucy is not a social elephant with other elephants, which I would find astounding.
Yeah.
But, all of these arguments were made with Maggie as well. At the Alaska Zoo that Bob Barker was talking about, they said exactly the same things. They said she's an antisocial elephant, doesn't get along with other elephants, and she's too sick to be moved, it's too risky. Guess what? They moved her, she's getting healthier, and she's socializing normally with other elephants.
Right.
It's,
so when you see that happen, you've got to be thinking, man, if we can do that with her, we got to be doing that with some other elephants. I mean, it's crazy not to think that we can't make them better.
Absolutely, and Maggie's not the only example. There are dozens of elephants that have been moved successfully.
Wow. Now, I know Bob was saying that elephants are one of the worst animals to have in captivity, and I was going to ask you the question of, do you think there are certain animals that do better in captivity than others, or vice versa, some animals that do worse in captivity than others?
Yeah.
I mean, no animal should be in captivity, but, I mean, we're not going to stop all the zoos in one day, but if we can go one animal at a time, let's pick the ones that adapt the least, first.
Sure, and our position on zoos has always been, if you cannot meet the animal's biological and behavioral needs in the captive setting, then you have no right keeping them there.
Right.
So, for instance, the sanctuaries are, of course, captivity, too. Let's face it, right? We're moving her from one facility to another. The difference is hundreds of acres, freedom for her to move about as she pleases in that environment, to socialize as she pleases in that environment. If she chose not to want to socialize with the elephants, there's lots and lots of space for her to be on her own if she chooses to.
Right.
So the point is that if you can't meet their basic needs, then you have no right of keeping them. And that's not different than all animals, right? We talk about, I'm sure you've talked on your show probably about backyard dogs. And,
oh, absolutely.
So the point is meeting animals' needs. And if you cannot do that, then you should not be keeping them captive. And certainly elephants are very challenging animals to keep in captivity because they're wide-ranging and because they're highly social animals.
Right.